And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. Want to also welcome those who are joining us on Facebook, on YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Glad you all could be with us as well. And we have a very special guest that's joining us today. If you guys are joining us on the Amazon Live side, make sure you guys do hit that follow button so you can stay connected with all of our programming. You'll see it either here in this corner or down below. Also, you will see the books of our next guest. Spring Washam is joining us today. She's celebrating her brand new book called The Spirit of Harriet Tubman. We're going to talk to Spring not only about the writing of the book, but also what it's been like for her to use her platform to inspire and motivate others, and how she's been able, through the spirit of Harriet Tubman, to be inspired herself. This is an interactive conversation today, so if you have any questions or comments for Spring or myself, make sure you guys put those in the chat. The chat is wide open for you guys. But Spring, thank you so much for the time. Really do appreciate this.
I'm so excited to be here with you, Cyrus. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, the pleasure is definitely all mine. So a lot for us to talk about when it comes to the spirit of Harriet Tubman. I have my pages marked, Spring, that I want to be able to get into with you. But I want to talk about your platform, because this really impressed me when I was prepping for this segment, even before I got into the book. You've been able to do something really interesting, and that is to be on this journey of life for yourself and learning, but also being able to teach as well. What has it been like for you to be both student and teacher?
It kind of just happened organically. I never aspired to be a teacher. I think as I was growing up, I just was so interested in suffering and the end of suffering and why are things so hard? Why is there so much pain?
Hmm.
And that just led me into my own spiritual path of meditation, looking at my mind. And after many years of practicing and doing healing work, the teaching just became a natural expression. Like I never said, I'm going to write, I'm going to teach. It just became a movement of compassion. Oh, I can help others. I can share about my experience. And then other people seemed really interested in that. So it was very natural movement.
So that's interesting to hear you say, because I think the thing is, as we kind of look at the world, and it's interesting even in reading The Spirit of Harriet Tubman, Spring, we look at the world seems to be going in definitely the wrong direction. What keeps you on the right plane, even as it seems as though things may be falling apart around you?
Well, I think in some ways, maybe it's my tradition of Buddhism and how
Mm.
I grew up, but we are in samsara. We're in the matrix here, and it's
Yeah.
marked by delusion and greed and the mind, and so I always felt like I was just on a mission to see if I could open my hearts in the midst of it and use the difficulties to cultivate more love, more compassion, more presence. This is not easy, everybody. I'm not saying this is hard. This is warrior work to stay
Mm.
centered, to stay present, and to kind of just focus on the vision, the mission, what is working. Because there's also a lot of beautiful things happening simultaneously. Like feels like destruction, but there is also this sort of evolution and potential, I think, in all of us right now.
Yeah. So I want to talk about then your work then, and when it comes to Harriet Tubman, because again the book is called The Spirit of Harriet Tubman. I want to actually read what you said in connection with that with you, Spring, and then talk a bit about it. You say this: until that first visionary dream, I didn't have much of a connection with Harriet Tubman. I watched the 2019 movie Harriet and studied about her in high school, but beyond that, I didn't know much about her. Then, after that powerful vision of her rescuing me, an incredible connection began to form. I felt Harriet Tubman around me almost constantly. When I closed my eyes, I saw her in my mind. I heard the name Harriet over and over. I felt her story coming alive in my thoughts and feelings, and I began to get interested in her life, reading everything I could find about her online. So, talk to us about that. What was it like for you to go from, we all have heard the name
Yeah.
Harriet Tubman, to really embracing the essence of her?
Well, first of all, this was as big a shock to me as anyone else. As I write, of course, 2 minutes every year in Black History Month
Mhm.
his class, you hear Harriet Tubman, and we all say, "Thank you, Harriet," and that's it. Thank you, Mother Harriet. You were strong. But it was really powerful. She appeared in May of 2020, which I feel was a oh my God, the earth quaked in every direction,
Mm.
crack in something so profound in the global consciousness. And that's when Harriet, I say, flew in. And I think I'll be integrating this experience with Harriet Tubman for the rest of my life, understanding what it means to have this connection to this great ancestor, to be able to have this dialogue. And it was a mystery, but all I can say, Cyrus, is at that moment I was suffering a lot with what was happening in the community, what was happening with police brutality, and everything that was happening in the world. That Harriet really sent me a lifeline. Like through the spirit of Harriet Tubman, she gave me this ability to say, okay, stand up. I've got to be a light for my community. Because I was in the fetal position at that time. I was like, what is that? And I didn't have it. And somehow Harriet really can provide, I think, a transmissive presence and message of hope. I believe she did that when she was alive for people. She, when you're with, I feel like when you're with her, you could climb Mount Everest. And I believe, conducting on the underground, that was a journey of scaling, something that big in a way. But I believe that, her spirit is rising. And I say awakening from the underground because she is important, almost like a deity, a prophet, a person that understands this particular suffering that we are facing around racism and healing and inclusivity and discrimination. Like she represents that. We need to call on a certain energy that gets the wound of that in our wider culture. And Harriet's like, I'm that. I can help. I've been there. Yeah. I have been there on every side, and I continue to still be there. And so there was this great relief and tremendous comfort. I cannot tell you the comfort I get from this ancestor's relationship. And I'm amazed. As I said, I'll be amazed for the rest of this life and probably future lives at what in the world is going on. But I try to write the story as honestly and to share step by step what happened and how things unfolded in the most clear way that I could.
Spring, this is you and I have never spoken before, but what I thought was really fascinating for me, and I'm curious if you saw this connection too, because what we think about when it comes to Harriet Tubman is her opening the way, right? Opening the way for others. You've been able to do that in your work too. You've been able to open the way for others. You've been able to, in the middle of challenges, to show others what's possible. Was that part of the connection that became clearer to you as you were kind of going through this and understanding not only the vision, but also the purpose of her life and your own?
I definitely saw the connection. I've seen my lifelong work on compassion and showing up in communities and being with others and being someone who cares deeply about our path of liberation, freedom from suffering, how we can heal. So there is a connection, although I don't compare myself. I'm like, oh my, standing in Harriet Tubman's shoes, I feel like I'm a baby at kindergarten. But I do see that her life mirrors my highest vision of what could be potential when someone is really aligned with spirit and fearless in that way. Yes.
You say this when you said the word compassion. I thought about one of my places that marked in the book. So let me first say, for those who are just tuning in, I see some more of you guys coming in on the Amazon Live side. Welcome to you guys. Also, those joining us on Facebook, YouTube. I see you guys over there. I appreciate you guys being with us. You all are watching Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live. I'm talking today with Spring Washam. She's the author of other books you guys can find in the carousel over on Amazon. I'm going to highlight them for you guys over there, including A Fierce Heart. But the book we're talking about today is called The Spirit of Harriet Tubman. You guys can see it there. It is National Kindle Month, so e-reader month. So the Kindle edition is there as well for $4.99, or you can get the print edition as well. I have it highlighted there. Talking about compassion, and I'll share this with our audience, Spring, on pages 94 and 95. This conversation with Harriet, I love this part about compassion because you just referenced that. On page 94 here, it said to you, everything I did, child, was for the benefit of others. This is an essential quality for conductors and those helping on the underground. It's important that folks understand how deep this goes, child. And then talking about this idea of compassion, you ask on page 95, how does it work? Do you feel it in your mind? Do you feel it in your body? Here it says, child, it animates all spirit with a pure motivation. And when compassion builds in me, my body, speech, and mind become extensions of it. And then I love this part, Spring. I become the vehicle for it to express itself. This is a powerful form of love. And when it's turned toward the suffering aspect of others, it can become a dynamic combination of motivation and movement. I want to talk about that because that is a totally different way, I think, for many people to think about what compassion is and what it looks like. How did that sit with you to hear that connection between motivation and love?
Well, I was so fascinated by this motivation that Harriet had to risk her life over
Mhm.
and over and over. And I kept wondering what's behind that? Like what gets you up in the morning and is like, I'm going to be a commander today and lead a raid
Mhm.
and I'm going to save these people or I'm going to, what and that was the motivation throughout the entire life. We only get to certain pieces of Harriet's life in the Hollywood movie. It misses huge chunks. Her amazing career in the military, her achievements there, her work on behalf of women's voting rights and women's rights. And it was like a whole second life. We just usually see the conductor. So
Mhm.
in that context, I was asking what sustains you in this and this idea that compassion is love is it's just turned towards suffering. And when it's, an awakened being of somebody like Harriet Tubman, and through the book, she's revealing herself to me as being sort of this. By the end, I'm like, oh my God, this is this is like a fully awake being here. The spirit is now, her consciousness is able to reach people on that level. She couldn't really be more than what she could at the time she was alive. The consciousness was where it was. People needed Moses. She's like, I'm your Moses then,
Mhm.
but now it's like, everything's possible. So the compassion part, um, I have heard this before in the Buddhist text when great beings awaken, this all that's left is compassion when the ego has been obliterated. When the
Mhm.
selfishness and the I, all that's left is this dynamic energy that is just movement and movement. And it's like a movement of like a water faucet, just putting out the fires of suffering spontaneously because
Mhm.
all that's there is just heart and it's responding to what's happening.
Mhm.
So I love that teaching that, that there's a way that we could reach that level where we just become great compassion. And it's just movement and flow. And I love that. So I loved that dialogue too. So I'm
Mhm.
so glad that you got that part and were inspired and got to read it today. I love it.
Yeah. And I'm going to talk about another part I mentioned to you before. Spring and I had a great conversation before we joined you guys. And one of the things I said, it's interesting that we're having this conversation during also Women's History Month.
Yeah.
Very appropriate in that regard. But Spring, I want to step back for a second again and focus on you. I mentioned, and I want to go back to it for our audience on Amazon, that you have other books as well. This is work that you have devoted a great deal of yourself to as we're celebrating Women's History Month this month and looking at the accomplishments of women, and this question is going to tie into another part I'm going to read from your book, but have you been able to appreciate the accomplishments of yourself?
I think more and more every day,
Mm-hmm.
because as we heal, we grow, and also we're liberating ourselves from our own prisons of the mind. We're seeing ourselves
Mm.
clearer and clearer, right? At first, we have blessings, but we're like, I'm not worthy. I don't know. And, we're not connected, and I think somehow through this book, I felt this profound connection. And Harriet was, Miss Mother Harriet, we call her, was also reminding me over and over. And this was helpful. So I think every day there's that seeing our goodness, seeing are the little steps that we take and how important the little steps are, because at the end of the day, that leads to the great, the great
Mhm.
turning, the great journey is like little steps. We underestimate the work that we do. So I'm trying to um, definitely appreciate the impact that my work seems to have for those who connect to it. And that's all I want, is to be a vehicle of love and compassion and inspiration that, you know, we are magic. And also, the spirit of Harriet Tubman, it's alive, it's awakening. And we could
Mhm.
tap into that as a resource for additional support, inspiration, and resiliency.
Yeah. You know, this is so funny. It's funny to me because, again, you and I before today had not talked, and everything you're saying is connecting the pieces I was going to read. The next piece I'm going to read is about the mental prison.
Yeah.
And when you just said that, I'm like, talk about connection. We
Right,
have
right.
a connection right here.
We're on the same page. I love it.
So I want to read now that Spring has perfectly set this up now. I love this part. It's on page 48 of the book, talking about the mental prison, as Spring was just alluding to. I think this is interesting because when I got to this part of the book, Spring, I thought, wow, I want to spend some time on this because I think so much of the reason why we are where we are is because of here.
Mhm.
And this is what Harriet says to you, child. You got to understand and remember this: all chains can be broken. It doesn't matter who you love, what color is, your religion, culture, custom, or what kind of body parts you do or do not have. This love, this power, this intelligence is surrounding all of us. No one is left out. We all belong to it, and it belongs to us. Our deepest pain is believing we are separate from it, that it's outside of us, or that we're not worthy of it. We don't feel it because we're asleep. We don't see it because we're so blind. Child, I see many eyes beginning to open. It's time, child. It's time to see what's there all along. And this is what you said to that point. What made Harriet so powerful was that she unlocked the doors of these mental prisons early in her life. She woke up, and her message to all of us is to wake up as fast as possible. There is no time to lose. I want to talk about that
Yeah.
because that's big. That is big.
Mhm.
So talk to us about what that's been like for you to realize that freedom begins here, Spring.
Well, you know what's funny is I think I always knew that, just growing
Hmm.
up with trauma. In my first book, I write a lot about this, that as I grew up with parents that had addiction problems and around gang members and shootings and, spending so much time in South Central Los Angeles, I've always looked at people around and was like, what is wrong? It's mind. I know it's something with our minds.
Wow.
So I had that insight very young in life, but at the time I didn't know how to work on my mind. Now it's more advanced. Back then there was a few books in the library,
Yeah.
but there wasn't meditation apps. There wasn't, so I think it's really important, if we think about it, that at this point we are free and we have choices that we make every day. And those choices are leading us on to more freedom, or we are going back to the plantation, one could say.
Mm,
We're either moving off or we're moving back towards our prison, right? It's all mental at this point. And
mm.
I believe that Harriet was reminding us that, because it's like, you all are free now, right? And if you can awaken and start to see that anything that's blocking that is a program, you're not good enough. And the program is deep, this inferiority and superiority. I use both to talk about, illusions of supremacy and white supremacy. And then the inferiority complex is the other side, right? We have this deep sense of, from years of programming, that we're not equal, we're not good enough. Both sides are affected negatively by this. Nobody is exempt from this on some
Yeah.
level until you wake up. And I think that that's the key, is for people to understand that the consciousness of Harriet Tubman is what this book is about, and the freedom that can come when we practice. So you have power to transform your mind. You're not, this is epigenetics. This is science now. And neuroscience is showing us that everything is changeable and there's step-by-step practices that can help us. But the pull of the prison is strong. Oh my God. Through this book, I realized about halfway through, oh my God, I'm on the spirit underground. Harriet is conducting me. And at times I was like one of the passengers who would stop in the middle of the road and go, I want to go back, and it was like, there is no going back. So for me, even to see that in my mind, going back, I want to go back or I don't want to go forward, or what is making me sit in the middle of the road, too scared to go here, maybe wanting to go back, not sure. So this is spiritual work, that we can do step by step, meditation practices, prayer practices, understanding who we are. This is the real work that I feel that I can bring forward to people through the spirit of Harriet, because why? Harriet was able to get out of these prisons. And now there's a way in which that's what she's conducting people into now. Like the spirit underground, is a state of consciousness. And that's where Harriet Tubman is still conducting through consciousness. So for me, part of my work is helping people see that at this stage, we are imprisoning ourselves. Okay, how do we move to a state of liberation? How do we see it for what it is and make that shift? And, that's what we do with compassion. And that's what our practices are about. And for everybody who's listening, this is a time to be cultivating your power, your practice. Where are you in a prison? Where are you stuck? And this is just something to reflect on that's unique, this view through the spirit of Harriet as a way to work on our minds. I feel like this is an accessible sort of door for people to be like, yes, because Harriet Tubman represents a kind of liberated spirit. I mean, not only liberated, but fearless. And I think it could reach a lot of people with her story. She's done these things. She's been there. Everything, she's been there, real time.
So, Spring, to that point, to the passage I just read, and again, I have the book highlighted for our friends on the Amazon Live side. For those who are joining us on Facebook, on YouTube, and Twitter, you'll notice there's a link that's with this broadcast. It'll bring you over to Amazon to be able to get the books for yourself. But Spring, the passage I read, two things that struck me. It's almost like, I'm a movie guy. It's almost like the Matrix moment, right?
Yes.
Of realizing you have to wake up. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But there's so many people who are comfortable in sleep.
Right.
So I want to talk to you about that, because it goes to another point that I got from the Matrix that ties into me in this segment. And that is the idea of what freedom looks like. How has your idea of freedom changed through this journey with Harriet Tubman?
I think that this is such a great point. Where I feel like Harriet opened some inner doorways for me was in connection to source energy.
Okay.
It was almost like there's this doorway that we're connected to. It's like a light. And I was blocking that in some way by not believing in it. But not believing the ancestors are real, but not believing there's a support of the universe. And at this stage in our evolution, we've got to rely on a multi-dimensional universe to get through some of these trials and tribulations that are affecting us as a collective species, humanity, And so for me, it was through this process, it was like this door opened. And in that, I felt the connection of what Harriet was talking about. And that gave me a tremendous relief. I'm not outside of the circle. It's almost like she pulled me. I was alone sitting outside with my back turned going, I'm all alone. And then Harriet's like, no, you're not here. And that provided a lot of comfort. So believing we are separate from source, believing that we are separate from spirit, that this power is outside of us and we're not connected to it. I think that this is a big piece of the work. It's like the reconnection is the healing, a reconnection to source energy, universal consciousness, spirit, whatever you want to call that.
Right.
We don't need an intermediary right now. Harriet's a bridge showing you your power. She's like, we don't need people to help us. We need people to help us access our power, right? I don't need to rescue people. I just need to be like, okay, you have power and how to access that, right? It's in us. And so that was something that was missing that kind of came online. And that's what's so beautiful is that we could have a lot of practices and a lot of tradition. You could be a Christian, you could be a Hindu, you could be a Muslim, you could be whatever religion you want to be, but there'll be something in this to help your practice in some way, your sense of connection to your higher power, whatever that is, the God of your, whatever it is that you imagine, whatever it is that you're devoted to, whatever your faith is. So it's about just feeling like you're connected to something bigger than just this reality. You're more than your traumas and dramas.
Yeah. And would you also say one of the big takeaways from this book, Spring, is realizing, as as you share in the book, that life really is about service. That's the other great thing that Harriet shows is that service has to be first. You can't be selfish if you want to be able to continue to be free.
Exactly. And there's stages to awakening to the path of service. It's the hero's journey, right? The hero goes out, fights the classic archetypal story, fights the demon, gains the wisdom, and at the end of their battle, they go back to the community and share their gifts. So for some people, they're in this healing journey in order to be of service, right? They have to awaken to, once they get it, they awaken this compassion and love. Oh, I get it. It's about all beings helping to liberate, but people have to, that's part of the walk. That's part of the journey of the soul's evolution, is to see that that's where happiness really lies, So we have to kind of wear out the other false paths, I guess, or not false, but they don't go to happiness. Where is happiness really found? In being a light to humanity. Yeah. Being in connection.
Love that. Definitely giving a new definition, I think, to what emancipation is today, I think. And how it's something all of us can still be able to attain toward. Again, everyone, Spring Washam has been our guest. The new book is The Spirit of Harriet Tubman. You guys see it there, available through our friends here on Amazon.com, here in print, as you guys can see there, as well as in Kindle, the Kindle edition as well. And while you're over there, make sure you guys do pick up Spring's other books as well, including A Fierce Heart. Spring, really enjoyed this conversation with you today. How can our audience stay connected with you?
Yeah, they can find me at my website. Everything is there, springwasham.com.
All right. I want to thank our friend Dawn for setting up this conversation with Dream Relations PR for sure. And Spring, looking forward to our next chat together.
I know. Thank you, Cyrus.
More than welcome. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live. Until next time, you all make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon.